Google, so your Professor Wikipedia and Dr. Google becomes your source of information and also source of knowledge. And the worst part is WhatsApp University adds to disaster. So WhatsApp universities are the kind of a digital platforms that go on adding disasters and also create a false consciousness. Consciousness in India has always been that of consciousness of senselessness. So you have to understand as to how you understand the structures of consciousness as well as the ways in which you perceive certain things in your everyday life. And why I am saying so, precisely because the Article 51 of the Indian Constitution talks about rationality, the scientific temperament. So how much really we are engaged in creating that kind of a scientific temperament, that is something which is quite interesting to observe. At the outset, I must say that I have a very important observation to share with you, that India has three distinct achievements. That we are a fantastic labor supply country. That is one. I mean, any kind of labor, right from Safai Karmachari to PhD, engineer, doctor, every scientist is space scientist, aeronautical scientist, and everything. So we are a fantastic labor supply country. Our second achievement is we are a Mithyavadi Sanskriti. That we are a culture of mythic. And the third is Vitambanavadi Sanskriti, that is culture of defamation. और किसी को भी lynch करो, किसी को भी उल्टा करो, किसी को भी छिनाल कहो, किसी को भी कुछ भी कहो, you abuse any girl, any woman, anybody on the street. So that all comes under Vitambanavadi Sanskriti. So these are our distinct achievements, and what kind of a nation then we would like to have is up to you to decide. I won't say anything to you, but I have categorized this, and if you wish to beat those categories, then what kind of a measures you should initiate, I think it is, I leave it to your wisdom. So today's my lecture is Ambedkarian Aesthetics and a Creative Space, a Visual Narrative. It is something which is quite I am engaged with it. Recently I also curated an exhibition of Vikrant Bise. It has been pulled down now today. So yesterday was almost the last day. So I'll begin my lecture with a quote from Dr. Ambedkar's caste, annihilation of caste. Dr. Ambedkar talks about, this is a very seminal text, annihilation of caste, and everyone should read that text. It's very sad that these are the kind of texts that are not discussed or for that matter taught in our university and pedagogic system. So this becomes a big stumbling block for any kind of a sensitization. Now I deliberately use the term Ambedkarian. So let me explain you a bit why I am using this term Ambedkarian. I make a distinction between Ambedkarite and Ambedkarian. So, though they complement each other, however, there is a distinct difference between the two. The Ambedkarites are the one who are completely, a very devout Ambedkarites who completely reject many of those religious formulations and all. So that is those are the Ambedkarites. Whereas Ambedkarians are the one who believe in the constitutional ethos of the country. That is how I would like to put. And they, despite their religious diversities, they believe in equality, and they would like to confine their religious practices to their household and not become part of the public. And in the public, they always resolve or they always believe in the constitutional ethos of equality, liberty, fraternity and so on. Now, let me also tell you that Dr. Ambedkar was the first person who critiqued the French Revolution and Russian Revolution. He makes a critique of the French Revolution, says that French Revolution was all about liberty and it bypasses equality. Whereas Russian Revolution was all about equality but bypasses liberty. And And he says, both cannot exist, you cannot achieve without fraternity. And for him, understanding of fraternity is not bandhutva, is not only a brotherhood, but it all depends on the compassion. So he considers that compassion is very essential. And this compassion is a Buddhist concept of compassion. So there is a sympathy and compassion. These are the empathy and sympathy. These are very two different terms, and you should also understand. See, the karuna, that is compassion, is all about fixing the problem and not, and not just making a daya kind of a things. And there is a respect, like irrespective of your differences, there is a respect for each other, there is a respect for you as being human being. So this is very important, and that is how Baba Sahib learns these things from the Buddhist logic and says that I derive my concept of, or my resolve in liberty, equality, fraternity, not from the Western model, but from my Indian master Buddha. That's how he says. So these are very important junctures where you have to understand the logic through which he was making certain understandings, and also creating certain ethos, and also making everyone to be responsible citizen of the Republic of Government of India. So this is very important, that we have to be a responsible citizen of the Government of India. And also it becomes everyone's responsibility to create transformation in the society. So this annihilation of caste is a seminal text he wrote. There is a difference between anti-caste and annihilation of caste. That also you need to understand. Anti-caste is all about, okay fine, I don't believe in caste. But annihilation of caste is completely rooting out the caste itself from the system and rejecting those philosophies. This is very important. See, the Indian system has always been divided into the Vedic and the non-Vedic camp. The non-Vedic camp is represented by Buddhism, by Jainism, by Sikhism. These are the non-Vedic camps. So you have to understand that logic. And then see, that is why Ambedkar, when he, in his annihilation of caste, he writes, the way Buddha did, the way Nanak did, the way Kabir did, the way Phule did, those are the important references he makes in that particular text. And there is also philosophy, there are a lot of other things which are there in that particular text, and you can create multiple readings out of that one seminal text. I have not seen any intellectual in 20th century India who produced such a seminal text. There are a couple of texts which are extremely important to understand, and also understanding of our social sciences. So he writes that rules are practical. They are habitual ways of doing things according to prescription, but principles are intellectual. They are useful methods of judging things. Rules sit to tell an agent just what course of action to pursue. Principles do not prescribe a specific course of action. So this is how he distinguishes between rules and principles, and this becomes a very important criteria. Nobody has used this kind of a criteria to analyze the existing phenomena in the society. So we always look back to the Western models like Marxism, postmodernism, Foucauldian kind of a things, and everything. I mean, I'm sorry to say, and I must tell those things to you, that people generally derive to talk about all this autocratic rule and the dictatorship from the model of Hitler and Mussolini. You see, on the contrary, Nietzsche creates or borrows his Superman model from Manusmriti. And Indians, they will take the model of Germany to address the dictatorship in India, the dictatorial practices. I think it is a sheer nonsense. Better look at your own textual tradition, Manusmriti and Arthashastra. are the two important body of text which tells you how to maintain anarchy in the society. It's very, very categorical. And therefore, you should also see as to how certain things get propagated in the 20th century or in the late 19th century. The whole idea of that the Aryan brotherhood, so much dominates and hovers on the minds of the European that they are also equally responsible for creating this kind of a greatness of the tradition. What kind of a greatness? The cultural nationalism is all the Brahmanical cultural nationalism. It's not the Indian cultural nationalism. You have to distinguish these two important factors, and this is where when you use this rules and principle logic, you suddenly come to understand that how you can define this cultural nationalism which is being talked about in India. It's very simple. There is a critique of Gita by Dr. Ambedkar, there is a critique of Vedas, there is a critique of philosophy of Hinduism, there is a critique of the entire social system in India, and Ambedkar was Phule was the first one to make a critique. Second person who was very important was Ayodhya, who made a very constant critique. The third person important was Swami Dharmatirtha. A fantastic mind we had then. And then later on you find that it is completely overtaken by Dr. Ambedkar. Then P.L. Narsu comes, and then Dr. Ambedkar, and then you have Rahul Sanskrita, Bharandananda Kausalyan and Sharad Patil. So these are very important people who have been engaged in challenging the discursive practices in India. So you have to understand that. And therefore, how you read Ambedkar, how you understand Ambedkar, that really matters a lot. I mean, these are the kind of things which are not in the textbook, let me tell you. Nor any scholar has written on it. Okay? So, what I am telling you is all my own understanding and my own study. So, I should share with you those things rather than replicating what has already been written. And by and large, the discourses in India can be categorized into several things. It is imperial discourse, one. Second is a Brahmanic discourse. Third is a non-Brahmanic discourse. Fourth is a Marxian discourse. Fifth is a gender discourse. And then gender discourse again gets divided into Savarna gender and Avarna gender. These are very important categories of discourses and the kind of a model that have emerged in 20th century India. So I speak from the non-Brahmanic tradition. My conscience is very clear. So I always tell my other people who are Vedic, who are Vedantics, I say, fine, I am very good friend of you, you are a very good friend of mine, but when it comes to philosophical these things, I will always have differences. I said, I don't believe in God, divinity, you believe in God and divinity, I will not force my views on you not to believe in God and divinity, and you should not force me to believe in God and divinity. I said the Constitution of India gives equal right to us. And the Article 25th also gives similar kind of a right. So I also have a right to propagate my ideology, you also have a right to propagate your ideology. So it is all a competitive spirit that is being maintained. So this becomes very important. So the next is inhibition. How there are inhibitions. You know, we carry a lot of inhibitions, and that always obstruct our thinking, our understanding, to do certain things, not to do certain things, and we are so much guided by our normative. So I would like to explore this whole idea of inhibition and how people in India have managed to kill those inhibitions and come forward. The today's generation, let me also say something, when Mulk Raj Anand had a conversation with Dr. Ambedkar at Tough Parade Road in Mumbai. It's an interesting conversation and you must read that. Everyone should read that. It was paid by Mulk Raj Anand only. In Ambedkar's biography, you will not get anything. that he made Mulk Raj Anand. And what Mulk Raj Anand wrote, Dr. Ambedkar was well aware, he already read those things. So it's not that Ambedkar was not reading fiction or those kind of, he was reading everything. Let me tell you. I'm sorry, I don't read fiction, so I don't know much about the fictions, but certainly I read certain amount of literature which is of my interest. And there are people who read literature across the section of the society. So all kinds of people are there, and say for example today, the abusive words which exist to denote certain section of the society, will you get those words in the official archive of Government of India? No, not at all. You will get it only in the literature. And therefore, the Dalit autobiographies become very important. Because the construction of that person is not about himself, but he is constructing his own image and the existence of the society in the perception of others. So it is the perception of others which basically gets disseminated through these autobiographies. And irrespective of these things, person like Devjani Ganguly calls it as mythography. Can you imagine? अरे क्या level है intellectual का? बकवास. They are the scoundrels of the sterling quality, I must say. Intellectual scoundrels of the sterling quality. Will you say that Indian Constitution is a mythograph? Will you categorize it as mythograph? Will you say that Guber Shudras, which was written by Dr. Ambedkar, is a mythograph? Philosophy of Hinduism is a mythograph? Annihilation of caste is a mythograph? Or the entire Dalit literature that has been produced in India is a mythograph? See the level and see that caste Hindu arrogance. It is that caste Hinduness that goes into the perception and your understanding and gets dominated by these people. So therefore you have to understand what kind of a politics of interpretation that goes. So the present day, currency is that of post-colonial. I don't know what is post-colonial, I'm sorry to say. I have not seen any kind of a explanation to post-colonial or any theoretical model to post-colonial. It is all derivation. I always make this distinction. There is a difference between theory and theorization. Theory is all about producing a key to explain the phenomenon in the world, which is universal. Theorization is a reductive urge which thrives on derivation. So something which is written by Foucault, something which is written by Derrida, something which is by Lacan, by a lot of people. So you make use of that and make a reductive urge. So that becomes a process of theorization that does not produce a key. Let me tell you. Foucault's knowledge and power is a critical framework, is not a theory. So, say Buddha's theory of Pratyuta Samutpad, Marx's theory of base and superstructure, or even for that matter, then the Nyaya Vaisheshika logic are the theories to explain the phenomenon, which has a universal application. You may agree, you may not agree. That's a different thing. But it has that universal compass to explain the phenomenon in the world. So this is how you have to understand. Or my idea or my conceptual formulation of protected ignorance is basically based on the theory of Pratyuta Samutpad. I will not call it theory. I simply call it as a critical framework to understand the knowledge production process in India or anywhere in the world. What is protected ignorance? I will give you a small example. A professor of physics gets up in the morning and pours water to sun, despite knowing the fact that water will never reach to sun. A fantastic example of protected ignorance. So you have to see whether the knowledge which you are producing, killing your ignorances or maintaining the ignorances or producing those kind of protected ignorances. That's how you have to see. And then there is a constant ghettoization of these aesthetic forms, which get so much ghettoized in the contemporary practices. The second important thing is this particular famous quote in the Constituent Assembly, which Dr. Ambedkar declares that On 26 January 1950, we are going to enter into a life of contradictions. In politics, we will have equality, and in social and economic life, we will have inequality. In politics, we will be recognizing the principle of one man, one vote, and one vote, one value. In our social and economic life, we shall, by reason of our social and economic structure, continue to deny the principle of one man, one value. And we still deny, we are still struggling. And this is where I again recall that particular conversation between Mulkraj Anand and Dr. Ambedkar. And where Dr. Ambedkar, because Mulkraj Anand was very vociferous. Oh, you have not done this, you have not done that, this thing, that thing, all kinds of, all that anger he showers in that conversation. And that conversation begins with, Mulkraj Anand says, Namaste Doctor. And Dr. Ambedkar replies, Om Mani Padme Hum. See the difference. And both explain Namaste and Om Mani Padme Hum. And Mulkraj Anand accept the fact that what kind of things we practice. So even our everyday greeting, we don't talk about equality, we don't address the equality. That is how the whole conversation is all about. Then conversation moves further and Mulkraj Anand accuses Ambedkar like anything. And Dr. Ambedkar says, no, I was alone in the Constituent Assembly. But there is enough in the directive principles of the Constitution. And the next generation has to take it up. That next generation, imagine how long it took to emerge that next generation. It is in 21st century, this next generation has emerged. Because people are getting conscious about their rights, about their existence, and that existence is defined and derived from the Indian Constitution. It is that next generation which has come. And that is the reason you will find that even Ramchandra Guha took a placard of Ambedkar's photo and made protest against the CA NRC in Bangalore. Or even for that matter, all the protests which you are witnessing in Delhi, invariably you will find the image of Ambedkar. Why it is so? You have to find out why it is so. It is cutting across the section of the society. It is not only the followers of Ambedkar, but also the left and all liberals and everyone is now following that. वो जब मार पड़ती है ना, तब पता चलता है कि बाबा साहब ने क्या किया है. तब तक भी कोई पता नहीं चलता. सिंपल है. हमारे देश में जो consciousness है, I call that we have a consciousness of senselessness. We don't have a consciousness of goodness. Very simple. Very, very simple. So these contradictions, how do we read these contradictions in aesthetical terms? It is then possible to read such contradictions in the cultural productions, and how do we read aspects of representation not in the mere mimesis, denotations, connotations, but part of consciousness of being and part of representation politics. So I want to expand this particular idea and see the visual productions today, and I will show you a number of images. Inhibition is a generic term that needs interrogation. Its political impact has been too widespread and is connected with the normative and many presuppositions. The psychological factors in art practices are pivotal in understanding the nature of creative realms. However, as a part of the political democracy, it becomes pertinent to see how sensibilities have developed over a period of time and resulted in adoptions, appropriations, replications, duplications, and reproductions. Brahminic modernity has created aesthetic of ghettoizations, and the fact that pictorial modernity being confined to mere formalistic plasticity persuasions rather than getting engaged with the political and part of being a democracy. The term Ambedkarian aesthetic is a world free from prejudices, inhibitions, and meta-narratives of Brahminic hegemony modernity. Its historical trajectory is to, this is my definition of Ambedkarian aesthetics. Its historical trajectory is to subvert the narrative of the given and propose to get into a process of dismantling several inhibitions that have been nurtured over a period of time. Historical past, both ancient and modern, are constant reminders of ideas of contradiction that have been part of lives, including the life of works of art. For many, it is a constant engagement to kill protected ignorance. So that's how I define Ambedkarian aesthetics. And this is also equally applicable to the literary field. Public perception is another problem that created many protected ignorance in everyday life, including the field of visual language. Normative understandings are constantly being propagated that have caged many of our ideas of canonization of aesthetics, resulting in the structured thought process of protected ignorance. With the aesthetics being political, there is always a conscious choice towards the pictorial signifiers that have evolved through the means of political understandings. Gateway's perception has created hindrances to remaining categorically restrictive and produced its impact on visual productions. The post-colonial lens is often used to justify the aesthetic canons of Gateway's perceptions as well as marked with the silence of the aesthetical process of alternatives and the meta-narrative of modernity. So, now I go to the images. These are by Savisagar. ये बंद कर दो, तभी you will enjoy the images. Otherwise you will not enjoy.
One light.
हाँ ये बंद कर दो, ये सारे लाइट बंद करो, कोई दिक्कत नहीं, मुझे कोई दिक्कत नहीं. I don't have any problem.
वहाँ से वहाँ.
ये भी बंद. And these also. Is it okay now? Yeah. So you will enjoy better these images. So these are paintings by Savi Savarkar, who painted untouchability. He was the first one to paint untouchability. Then on Devdasi and lot of other thematics. So these are the images from his Lalit Kala Academy exhibition. So this is all about the Devdasi, and then there is a big painting, this one, Manu. So these are very important. I mean, there are a couple of important paintings, number of important paintings he produces. So he becomes the first person, I should say, who really started this Ambedkarian aesthetics in the country. And then on, you will find number of people taking up after a considerable time gap. So what he started doing in from 1990 onwards. Okay, he emerged from he started painting all those things in 1990 onwards. Whereas the next generation that came was in 2010 only, 2008, 7, 8. So it took such a long time for the next generation to come, and they also started painting the thematics of untouchability. And then later on, you will notice that there are a number of people who started practicing, making this as an important body of the practices. So it cuts across the section of the society. So I come to certain important epoch of the last decade and the present time. Okay. These are by Riasco. Very interesting, very well-known painter. And he was the first youngest one to enter into Venice Biennale from India. Youngest painter. So, he's from Kerala. He studied in Mumbai, and he understood the ethos. He understood the restrictions or the kind of ghettoization that goes on. So, in the post-independent India, or rather, I should say, post-1990 India, 95 India, you will find emergence of Ambedkar, and how, like, the Gandhi Ambedkars are clubbed, and gradually it is Ambedkar which becomes important. So it's a very good painting. Then we have Fourth World. So the national emblem, our national emblem is very important, and he put that as a part of installation and as a part of the constitutional democracy and the Indian constitution. And then revolving around, I mean this entire installation moves, it makes a goal checker. And then this is the this is all about questioning. I'm sorry, I'm copyright artist. I wrote that was for some other purpose, so I have not removed that. But you can see those images, and then questioning the legacy, questioning the cultural ethos, and bypassing those equalities and all those things. And then you see these very important images of Ambedkar, and he donated to Ghana, so Africa country. This particular artwork is in Ghana. Then there is another one. I'm sorry, the image is not that clear, but what he does is that he is the first Indian painter who gets engaged with the preamble page of the Indian Constitution. So what you see is a preamble page colored in blue. So that has a distinct Ambedkarian thinking, that preamble. There is an interesting book by Akasin Rathod on preamble of Ambedkar, something. It's a very interesting book. Then came the next generation, and this is by Ranjita Kumari. She is based in Patna. See, Riaz is from Muslim community, whereas Ranjita Singh is from other backward communities. So you have different kind of a community coming from those things and believing in the constitutional ethos becomes very important, and they choose this preamble as a object of creating artworks. So what you notice is the preamble page gets watermarked and with this labor feeds and all. So that becomes a very important critique of how certain practices are there and people are struggling with that. I'm sorry, I'm not showing you the video. Actually, this is a video. So it's an interesting video, but I'm not showing you the video because it will take a lot of time, and then so I don't want to get into those things. And then you have Vikrant Bhise, another important painter based in Mumbai, in the suburb of Dombivli. So he gets engaged with this preamble page and makes lot of drawings on it. So showing the labors, showing migration of the agricultural labor from rural India to the urban India, and then you also find the CA NRC protesters. So then this is actually this is part of the exhibition which recently I curated on Vikrant Bhise's artworks. So there are